Great day in Imago Day. Greet me, put your winners V up, your victory pose. Greet me in Imago Day by putting your 3 crowns in the comments, or you can put the crowned female or male emoji, or you can just put in Imago Day, put Imago Day with 1 crown. However, put Imago Day or 3 crowns in the comments and greet me in Imago Day. Put your winners V up, your victory pose. Let everyone know that you're a winner. Everyone spiritually, everyone naturally. Put your winners V up. I want to say good evening. Welcome to all the winners. Put your winners V up, your victory pose. Welcome to everyone who is secure and claiming their Imago Day image and likeness of God. My name is Victoria I. Phoenix, founder of Trauma Training University, also best-selling author. My most recent book, Play Your Ace Before It Plays You, How to Use Social Trauma for Empowerment Rather Than Imprisonment. Okay, that's my most recent book. I have some more coming out about ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, which is what the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, calls trauma that happened to individuals between the ages of 0 and 18 years of age. Social trauma. And of course, anything that happened after that, I just refer to it as social trauma. But when I talk about playing ACEs, I'm talking about adverse childhood experience, but I'm also including other traumas in there as well. I know a lot about ACEs, have been able to play those in my life, and blessed to know that it happened and know how God got me through it, know some of the strategies and some of the mindsets, some of the tools and resources that he used to help me get through it, to play those ACEs, to deal with the hand that I was dealt, to play those ACEs and still win the game. I'm winning. Winners V, victory pose, put it up. I don my crown every day. I wear my crown. I know that I'm created in the image and likeness of God, and that's who I'm meant to be. And so because I was able to play ACEs, or to escape that social trauma, those adverse childhood experiences, I know that I'm anointed, I'm gifted, along with the gifts of teaching and learning, to help other people escape ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and other social trauma. Because one of our sayings at Trauma Training University, which I founded, is trauma in childhood should not ruin childhood or adulthood. And for many people, that's a sad reality that it is, generation after generation after generation. I was one of those people that said it will not go another generation in my family. ACEs will not play another generation on my watch. But of course, that takes some gall. That takes the anointing of God. First of all, that takes the grace of God, the Spirit of God. You have to be in spirit to make that happen, because it's so much against you, not just from your present day reality, but from hundreds of years and even thousands of years ago. There's so much spiritually passed down through the bloodline that if you don't erase it by accepting your spiritual inheritance in God, there's no way you're going to defy the odds. There's no way you're going to stop ACEs from being played in your generation or another generation. And so tonight, like I think I'm leaning towards just being prayerfully considering changing Thursday night and Tuesday night live. Well, I know Thursday night live is going to be different anyway. That's going to be called You've Seen Through Too Much to Be Average, based on some of my personal experiences, good, bad, and ugly. But really, I want to focus on the good there. But Tuesday night, instead of You've Been Through Too Much to Be Average, I think that I'm being led to change it to playing ACEs. Okay. In the book, I make reference to playing ACEs. I make reference to playing games like gin, rummy, and spades. Now, of course, I don't play poker. I don't really know how to play it. I kind of have gotten somewhat of the gist of it by watching people play it, like on TV and things. I play blackjack, 21. I play spades. I play gin, rummy with my husband, or sometimes it's other people who want to play. But it's been a long time since I played, like decades probably, since I played with anybody other than my husband. What we do for fun. But I do know in those particular games, somewhat in 21, yeah. What I focus on in the book is talking about spades. When you play spades and when you play gin rummy, ACEs are very powerful cards. When we're talking about the natural use of them, playing cards in a deck of cards. We're not talking about adverse childhood experience, even though I'm paralleling it to that or making an analogy. So ACEs are very powerful cards, and they can mean a lot for you. They can mean a lot of points. They can mean advancing you in the game by winning you books. creating spreads for you and get you a lot of points, like 100 points. How we play Gin Rummy, an ace is worth 100 points. So if you spread with an ace, then of course that's 100 points added to whatever your score is, right? And then spades, aces are pretty high up as long as you play them right, okay? Just like any card, except for, I guess, the big joker and the little joker. Really the big joker, because the little joker can be eaten by the big joker if it's not played right. So really it's only one superior card in the deck of cards, but aces are pretty high up there as it relates to superiority, rank, points in a game, if you're taking points like Gin Rummy. So aces are pretty powerful cards when it comes to a deck of cards for the games that I play. Like I said, I don't know about bridge and poker and that kind of stuff, but I play Gin Rummy, I play spades, and I know aces are pretty powerful in those games, right? But I also know, as I spoke about in the book, I talk about this in the book because I use the analogy of playing before I started as I talk about adverse childhood experiences, I liken them to a real ace in a deck, an ace as an adverse childhood experience to an ace in a deck of cards, which is what I'm holding here, right? And so I liken an ace of spades and an ace of diamonds. And I see some people jumping on. When you jump on, please just put your 3 crowns in the comments, or put your crowned emoji in the comments and greet me any Imago Day, because I love to hear people or see people acknowledging the fact that they know that they're made in the image and likeness of God. That's a powerful thing. That's who we are created to be. Your life will definitely be worth living and rewarding and undefeated when you realize that we are all made in Imago Dei. In Imago Dei, the image and likeness of God. That's who we're created to be. We can play aces. We can overcome a lot of things. So thank you, Lamons, for putting your 3 crowns in the comments. Anybody who comes on later on, I'll say it from time to time for those watching the playback. When you hear it, put your 3 crowns in the comments. But like I said, in the book, I talk about aces as in a real deck of cards and adverse childhood experiences, and use them as an analogy. And so aces are very powerful cards. Playing Gin Rummy, which I like to play, playing spades, which I like to play. However, if you hold the ace too long, if you play it at the wrong time, if you play it on the wrong suit, aces can be very detrimental in a game of cards, as well as, namely, I'm talking about Gin Rummy in the game of spades. So aces can be very powerful. They can win books for you. Usually, they're probably, I would like to look at the statistics, but probably all the aces besides the ace of spades, they probably have maybe like an 85% chance of winning a book when you have them, as long as you play them right? And then the ace of spades has probably a higher probability. However, if you play aces at the wrong time, if you hold them too long, just like I'm saying, I love the fact that the CDC came up with this term, adverse childhood experiences, and the acronym is ACE, because it was, God quickly gave it to me and had me to start using that analogy. And I hadn't heard anybody else do it, using it in playing cards, okay? And so you see me on the cover holding this ace. I just got finished doing the series playing the ace of spades. A few months ago, I did the series playing the ace of diamonds, talking about generational poverty. The ace of spades is about African-American trauma, right? Black spade, black ace, right? The ace, black powerful ace. And so if you like I said, I love the fact that I can use ace as in a deck of cards, because many times people say you got to play the hand you were dealt in life, right? And I talked in here in this book about the spades table rules. When you're playing spades, and you know, spades is one of those games where people get shot. I know a person who has a bullet in their head now because of a spades game. Spades is one of those games where when people get saved, they say they don't play cards anymore. And I used to wonder, like, what's wrong with playing cards? It's not the cards themselves, it's what goes on like in the environment of playing spades. So spades is one of those games that and it could be like Gin Rummy or whatever. Spades is one of those games that has no gambling involved, but the energy just gets to the point of like fighting and that kind of thing, right? And so spades table rules says this. I learned this very young as I was watching my elders, my older brother and sister, cousins, uncles and aunts, because I was the baby of the family, watching them play cards, you know, have card parties and all types of other parties, watching them play spades. And what I found out after years and years of watching them in different settings, different people, is to keep down a lot of confusion. When you get ready to play spades, you need to lay down the spades table rules. And that may be for any game, but I knew it to be for spades, all right? Or like, I guess when I've seen people gambling, playing blackjack or whatever, you lay down the rules that, hey, we're playing this way, no French cutting. You cannot throw in hands even if you have no spades. You cannot pass your partner. You know, if you only have one spade, you can pass that one to your partner and that kind of thing. Now, there are groups of people who play that way, or rules that you play that way. But the rule I want to get at right now is the one I said a few rules ago. That is no throwing in hands. And I use that in this book. God, when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences, that childhood trauma, you hear people say, play the hand that you were dealt. I had to play the hand that I was dealt. That's true. In life, you can, but if you're a real fighter and you're gonna make some things happen and live to tell the story and make sure that you break generational curses off your family and that kind of thing, you're gonna have to play the hand that you were dealt. Yes, you can throw in the cards. You can say, well, yeah, I'm just gonna be a drug addict. Yes, I'm gonna just kill myself, that kind of thing, right? Or you can say, you could, not me, scratch that. You can say you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna be drug addict, that kind of thing. I just don't want to do it. There are some people that are hard down card players. Hard down, they could be hood people, they could be army people, they could be whatever. Tough people that say, hey, listen, when we play this game, spades table rules, tonight when we play, is no throwing in hands. I don't care how ugly your hand looks. And in this book, I break it down as to why I think that's a good rule to say that there's no throwing in hands. Because in life, you got to play with what you were dealt. And guess what? You can have that ace, and it could be very powerful for you, or you can have that ace and let it play you. You can say, hey, you could have counted it as a book and told your partner you have 5 books, and you had 2 aces, you waited too late, they got cut, and guess what? Now you only have 3, and now y'all are in trouble because you held that ace too long. Same thing with adverse childhood experience aces. You have trauma in you, things that are in you have not dealt with, they will deal with you. A lot of times they will destroy people. They destroy people from the inside out. They destroy people once they get out, they from the inside out, and then all around them. They destroy relationships. People cannot maintain healthy relationships, cannot maintain long-term relationships, whether it's in a job, whether it's in a romantic relationship, whether it's a family relationship. They cannot live a life and deal with life's issues without medicating their pain unhealthily with drugs, with alcohol, with promiscuity, with overeating, with undereating, with cutting. When people slash their arm, their wrist, that kind of thing, or different parts of their body, they cannot do it without overspending, without just all types of things. And so you can hold an ace, and as or like I said in the book, you can use your enemies as your footstool, as the Bible tells you should do. You can use your ace to empower you to say, hey, listen, like I said, you can take the New York state of mind. I talked about that earlier in a mini video I did. It's in this book. New York state of mind says, if I can make it through that, and some people have been through some heavy trauma, continuous trauma, whole lots of trauma. If you can make it through that, you can make it through anything. And so just like in the game of spades, the game of gin rummy, and aces are super powerful. They can help you win the game a lot easier than if you do not have aces. But the spades table rules for many people says there's no throwing in hands, because some people, because they're not good card players, or their character is not the best, they'll get a hand. And I've seen partners do this, people who are not of high integrity. Their hand will be crappy, and if both partners' hand is crappy, that means the other partners have loaded hands, right? And so rather than deal with this one hand, now, like I say in the book, the reason why not being able to throw in your hand is a good rule, because the odds are very unlikely that you're going to get a bad hand again and again and again. And so you just play the cards that are dealt to you. Next go around, your partners may have bad hands, or your opponents may have bad hands. You have to just play the cards you were dealt. And if you're a real card player, you'll improve that pretty much, the ratios or the probabilities are kind of evenly distributed. I think, unless you're cheating, you're gonna have. I'm sure they have it down to statistics that when you're playing spades, you're playing gin rummy. There's a likelihood that you're probably gonna have this percentage of great hands, this percentage of okay hands, this percentage of crappy hands. But basically, you cannot statistically have a bunch of bad hands. So this throwing in the hand thing is a no-go for some card players. They say if you are dealt a hand and you have no spades, your partner has no spades, you have no high cards or whatever, we cannot throw in hands. You're gonna play the cards. Those are real bona fide card players. And guess what? That's the way it is in life. And so I agree with that. And like I said, I broke it down in the book why I think that's a good rule, because statistically it's not possible really for you to just keep getting bad hand after bad hand after bad hand, unless, of course, Now I know this is spiritual right here. This is spiritual. What you think about, you bring about. Now if you're a pissy card player, you got bad energy. You're trying to cheat. You're moping and complaining. You're mad because you can't throw in a hand, and then guess what? That energy is going to may attract another bad hand for you, and then another bad hand, because that's the way we have that creative capacity, that attractive capacity. That's who we are. That's who we are in Imago Dei. We have the image and likeness of God to make things come from here out to here in the universe. That's what's called manifesting. And so people, it's a big thing now, manifesting, right? Which in reality, manifesting has always been around. All it is bringing things from the spiritual to the natural. Okay. Some of the heavy hitters in like personal development and even ministry and stuff have been using this term for a long time, but of course it has become like a buzzword now. But the concept has been around forever, right? Because we are by nature as humans, manifestors. Whatever we think about, speak about, we bring about, right? And so, yeah, I believe that a person that I've never seen this happen. Well, yes, I have. Maybe not in spades, but in other things. So when people say, no, you're going to play the hand that you were dealt and just hope, first of all, when you can't not throw in a hand because you have no spades, or you have a crappy hand and your partner has a crappy hand, then that's going to tell how good of a card player you are. What can you make happen with this hand, or let's say the next hand to catch up or whatever. Secondly, they're saying that really it goes with the breaks. Sometimes you're going to have banging hands where you can run a Boston, you can bet a 10, that kind of thing. Sometimes your hands are going to be crap and you gotta make do with it. That's how the cards fall. That's the probability. And I think that's a great skill for life. In life, sometimes things are going to come you're not pleased with. I'm not going to say you win some, you lose some. That's a cliche. I win everything. I'm a winner. God says that all things work together for my good. I'm seated high above all nations, all principalities, all power. Doesn't say that challenges don't come. Doesn't say the enemy doesn't try. But like I said how God gave it to me in kind of like an alliteration a couple weeks ago, that Satan can approach us. He can even address us sometimes, but he cannot attack us. He cannot attain us unless we open the door to him. Let me say it again. Satan, the enemy, he can approach you. He can even address you sometimes, but he cannot attain you, which is mean get you, and he cannot attack you unless you open that gate. Just like, and I gave the example of like a restraining order. When somebody has a hey Brianna, put your 3 crowns in the comments. When somebody has a restraining order against another individual, let's say and I'm gonna flip it around this time. Let's say there's a man who has a restraining order against a lady, right? She's stalking him or whatever. You can put in the paperwork. You can put the restraining order in. It can be legal downtown, cops or whatever. That doesn't necessarily keep her away from him, because she can still show up. Now, there may be consequences, but she still can show up. So Satan, even though he has been defeated and he has no power, he still can approach you, okay, with stuff. He can put things in your mind. You got to cast them down. You cannot entertain them. Negative energy like fear, jealousy, because as manifestors, as being made in Imago Dei, which is what this shirt says, being made in the image and likeness of God, what we think about, we bring about. What we speak about, we bring about. God gave us that power way back in the Garden of Eden, the first book of the Bible, the first chapter of the first book, right? And so, Satan can approach you. He can address you sometimes. He can even, address you, like try to speak to you, but he cannot attain you. He cannot attack you, because he does not have that power anymore unless you give it to him. And so, I do believe that people can, let's say, like statistically, really, you cannot just keep having bad hand after bad hand after bad hand unless you're attracting it to yourself, unless you get in that negative energy. So when people say, when they're playing cards and they play spades and say, hey, listen, this is our spades table rule for tonight or today, whatever we're playing. You cannot throw in your hand for any reason. And I've seen people of low integrity, people who are not good card players, people who are sore losers, people who are cheaters, and they let's say that rule wasn't discussed. That's why it's important that before you begin the game, you set your rules, because that stops a lot of arguing and fighting and bickering, because spades, for some reason, is one of those games that evokes high energy with people, right? So I've seen people where they didn't necessarily discuss the rules and say, hey, no throwing in hands for any reason. And these two partners had crappy hands. Now, of course, you know what that means. If you and your partner have a crappy hand, that means your opponents both have fire hands. They're busting hands, right? Their hands are just probably getting Boston on y'all, or at least a 10, right? 10 books, right? And so I've seen people of low integrity, people who are not good card players, are not good character, and they'll look at each other and both throw their cards in. Like, let's say that the dealer is still dealing, and people still have their cards laid on the table. They'll throw their cards in and mix them all in. And the people who had a good hand, like, no, what y'all doing? That's not right. Y'all cheat. They're like, no, we throwing it in, that kind of stuff. And that's lack of integrity. But guess what? And some people feel like that. But guess what? I'm not saying most things, most ACEs. I was speaking to a group of principals today, school principals for a county, and I was telling them that most ACEs, most enemies of life that are on the inside of us or that are around us have nothing to do with us. Okay, they're passed down from generational cycles of sin, of bondage, that kind of thing. Or even if they're not passed down, it's still, a lot of times they're passed down, or the environment that's created around you, somebody else created it for you as a child and it wasn't a healthy environment. And so many times the enemies within and the enemies without have nothing to do, or they started out having nothing to do with you because other people made choices for you, parents and that kind of thing. And so, but even with that, the spades table rule said there's no, some card players say there's no throwing in the hand no matter what, if you have no spades, if your hand is crappy. And the same thing, yes, you just got to learn how to play aces. You have to learn how to realize that, like I said, get yourself, as I say in this book, in the New York state of mind. Get yourself to the point where if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything. If you made it through that, through the aces that you were dealt in your life, the things that happened to you, the things that and that's another trauma-informed way of looking at things, especially if you deal with kids, if you're an educator, if you're in ministry. It's not what's wrong with you. The trauma-informed and trauma-responsive question is what happened to you, okay? What made you this way, okay? That is more sensitive. That's more trauma-informed, trauma-responsive. So a lot of things that happened to you had nothing to do with you per se directly. It was choices made for you. Like my parents, drug addicted. I never knew my father. Some people say my mother doesn't even know who he was because she was so promiscuous at that time for drugs and that type of thing. She used drugs the entire time she carried me. She abandoned me at birth and that kind of thing. But like I did a mini video earlier, God allowed me to never feel be played by the ace of abandonment. I've never felt like had people, allowed people to misuse me in relationships or abuse me because I was looking for love because of abandonment. I never sabotaged relationships because of that abandonment thing. Now, other people in my family have experienced that because of parents, but God, one thing is, God recently showed me, I don't think I bonded with my mother like other of my siblings and other people who had this issue. But also I know that it's the anointing of Moses on me, where God had to show Moses' mother, an Egyptian slave is what she was, that, hey, listen, this boy is supposed to be great. He's a beautiful young baby. And she saw greatness on him, and she knew without a shadow of a doubt that she had to get him out of her hands and out of her possession, because she knew that if he stayed with her, he was going to be a slave or dead. He was going to be a slave or dead, or both, okay? And so she did him a favor. She did many people who he led out a favor. The people he led out of Israel, which is what, was it millions of people that he led? If you watch The Prince of Egypt, if you know the story of Exodus. And so that's the way God enlightened me. That like I said, I never had an issue with it, but he gave me more power to play that ace and help other people play the ace, to say if your mother, your father walked away from you or hurt you or you abandoned you or gave you up, it's because they knew that greatness was on you. God some kind of way showed them that you were supposed to be great, and if you had stayed with them, you would never have been great. That's a way you play aces. And so tonight, like I said, I'm going to start this series, or start talking about playing aces, the recognizing aces, releasing them, recovering from them, and then reproducing, not them, but reproducing people who can do the same thing that you were able to do. It's called you all have heard, I'm sure you heard people say hurt people hurt people, but I recently heard a minister say, and healed people heal people, healed people heal people. So I want to go to the first book of the Bible. That it's a verse I reference a lot because of the simple fact, a passage, because it's two verses. Imago Dei, that's where I got the phrase from. Well, really I didn't get the phrase from it, it's a Latin phrase. And somebody shared it with me, and they said, well, basically the Latin phrase Imago Dei is talking about Genesis chapter 1 verses 26 and 27, right? Genesis chapter 1 verses 26 and 27, that's what Imago Dei comes from. Of course, there are other passages in the Bible that line up with that, but I guess this person was saying this is the very first reference in the Bible because it's the first book of the Bible, right? And this is how they got the Latin phrase Imago Dei, or in Imago Dei, in the image and likeness of God. And so I reference Genesis chapter 1 verses 26 and 27 a lot, directly or indirectly. Anytime I say in Imago Dei, that's referencing that, but sometimes I specifically or explicitly refer to those scriptures. And then lately I've been putting, a lot of times I put verse 28 in there as well, because after God told us who we were, and let me take a hydration break, in Genesis chapter 1 verses 26 and 27, then he showed us, he told us what we need to do with it in verse 28 of chapter 1. Let me take a hydration break. Okay, so this is the New International Version. Genesis chapter 1 verses 26, 27, and 28. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground, right? 5 things God told us. First of all, God told us who we were, who we are. He says, you're made in my image and not my likeness. I said, let us, God and Holy Spirit and Jesus, which is the word, because the word was flesh, that's us. God said, let us make man in our image. And so he created us, right? He created us in his image and his likeness. That's one thing. And then he told us what to do with that. He told us 5 things to do. And guess what? We can go back to the first chapter of the first book in the Bible and realize that you're supposed to be able to play ACES. He says, I want you to have rulership and take authority over everything that creeps on the earth. Guess what creeps on the earth? Every living thing that creeps on the earth. Spirits are living things and they creep on the earth. Okay, let me say it again. Spirits are living things and they creep on the earth. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, childhood trauma, regular social trauma. All those are a result of spirits, whether it's molestation, whether it's drug abuse, whether it is mental illness, whether it is neglect, whether it is emotional abuse, whether it is poverty. All of those are spirits, things that creep on the earth. The Bible says that God told us, when he told us we were made in Imago Dei, he said, have dominion over everything that creeps on the earth. That means ourselves and every spirit that we're subject to come across, good, bad, or ugly. Now, ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, social trauma that happened in childhood or any time. These social traumas, those are bad spirits controlling that. Like I said, it could be jealousy, it could be racism that you experienced, it could have been sexism, it could have been incest in your family, it could have been rape or physical abuse, or domestic violence in the house, watching your mother, get abused, all these things are a result of spirits, and we're supposed to have rulership over them. So let me tell you again, I'm a Christian. I don't have a problem letting people know I'm a Christian. I'm a minister of teaching as well. I don't have a problem telling people that. When I go and train, I'm going to respect, separation of church and state, and not put anything on you or try to convince you to do anything, but it's going to exude from my presence who I am, and it's going to come out of my mouth sometimes. It's going to come out of the way I do business and that kind of thing. And so I don't have a problem telling people I'm a Christian, and guess what? I don't have a problem telling you on here in the books I write and things that I do, that the only way you are going to overcome and play ACEs, and I mean truly play them, not medicate them with drugs and alcohol and spent shopping and fancy clothes and things like that, and women and men and sex and that kind of thing, and you really just covering them, medicating them and covering them. You have not healed them. You have not closed it up. The only way, and I say this, I'm going to look as close into the camera as I can, and like I said, I wish I could look into your eyes. The only way you're going to be able to successfully play ACEs and get them out of your hand so that they benefit you and not hurt you at the end of the game or too late in the game is in Imago Dei, in the image and likeness of God. When you know who you are in God and who He is in you, that is the only way. I tell people, and people, try to, I'm not religious because I'm too smart for that. I'm too, I have the gifts of teaching and learning. I have a spirituality. I'm not easily, people don't get over on me, that type of thing. But I have people that say, well, she's trying to be holier than thou, or she's talking about this. I'm telling you, the only way I was able to play so many aces in my life and win the game, and how, and some people don't want to accept it. So, and I know it's because some people have been hurt in church. Some people have been hurt by, false ministry and that kind of thing. But I'm going to tell you again, look as close into the camera as I can. The only way you're going to successfully and truthfully play ACEs is doing what God told you to do in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Have dominion, have rulership over everything that creeps on the earth. And everything that creeps on the earth includes spirits. Matter of fact, everything that creeps on the earth cannot creep on the earth unless it's led by a spirit, because spirit is what makes a person or animal alive instead of dead, right? And so just breaking it down, like I said, this series, and like I said, it may not just be a series, it may just be me changing the name of Thursday Night Live to Playing ACEs, okay? But we're going to talk about how to recognize, okay? When you got to first recognize, admit, realize and recognize. And when I say that, realize it, some of you have already come within yourself to know that you've been played by an ace. Something happened, you haven't dealt with it, it's been dealing with you, it's showing up. As I say, people wear aces on their faces, okay? It shows up in stress, it shows up in you, as in the book What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, when they say one of the ways one of the coping strategies, one of the 4 coping strategies of dealing with trauma for people, especially childhood trauma, is when you start to change your emotions and that kind of thing. One thing is, he said, one of them is over focus on negative things. I call it finding a way to lose, right? But I realized I had to come to the realization that that's actually an ace at play. That's a response to trauma. When people can always seem to find the negativity in things, or the negative in things, and they search high and deep and far and wide, or whatever it's called, it's because that's a response to trauma. All right, they've seen so much bad in their life. They've become so used to it and come to a place of accepting bad that that's what they look for. I've seen that in people. It really disheartened me. It really a lot of times made me angry with them. But God had to show me that there was an ace at play, and I just recently came to that realization within the last maybe 3 to 5 months, that it's actually in that book. Over focus on negative things is a response to trauma, right? And so these are the things you have to do in order to play these aces. You're going to have to recognize, okay? Recognize it. You know how, somebody will say, well, I was at the party, or I went to the meeting, they didn't even recognize me. They didn't even call my name. That means they don't even acknowledge that you're there. You have to recognize and acknowledge that something's wrong, that you were being played by an ace. It came down through the pipeline. Your mother, your grandmother, your uncles, your aunts dealt with it, and it's still running rampant. You have to recognize it first. You have to admit it's there. You have to call it by its name, okay? In the Bible, you realize that words are very powerful. The entire universe was created from the beginning by God's word. He gave us that same productive capacity. That's why we are made in Imago Dei, in the image and likeness. Or that's not why. That's part of the reason that we're called in His image and His likeness. So you have to speaking things and acknowledging them, that saying that they exist. That's important, okay? recognize that there's trauma, there's an ACE at play, there's something that happened in your childhood that's still dealing with you in adulthood because you have not dealt with it. There is something, you are being played by an ACE, and unless you check it at the door, it's going to play another generation in your family after another generation. But you gain the strength and the wisdom to say it's there, and you're going to annihilate it, take its head off and crush it and destroy it. And then you teach, first of all, you keep it off of the generations of your offspring, and you teach them how to keep it off, because the enemy will approach, he will address, but he cannot attack and he cannot attain when you know who you are in God and who God is in you. You know who you are in the image and likeness of God and the power of the cross, right? So you got to recognize it. And like I said, this is kind of like an overview tonight. I don't know. I don't really think I'm going to go too deep in it, but you have to recognize, you have to call it by name, accept it in your mind, speak it out of your mouth that there is something there. I'm not saying give life to it. I'm not saying just talk about it all the time, but you have to. Let me tell you, I said this the last few weeks. When God showed this to me, it's a great, concise way to say what needs to be said. When the enemy can distract you and have you treating the wrong symptoms or treating the wrong disease in your body, your soul, whatever, the longer he can distract you and tell you that it's this and it's not really this, that's the time that you allow this to live and grow, because you're spending all your energy and focus on this, saying that it doesn't exist or it's something else or it's not really that. And guess what? The real problem over here is growing and thriving and bringing friends and relatives and familiar spirits to come along and make it even much of a stronghold in your life. And so you must recognize, you have to put a name to it. You have to admit it on the inside and the outside. No, I don't want you to celebrate it. And like I said, this only lasts very temporary, because you don't want to give, as what is it? Ephesians 4:27, give no place to the devil. But you do have to acknowledge him, okay? You have to acknowledge the fact that you're being played by an ACE. Something's not quite right in your life. It has not been right. It wasn't right in your mother, your uncle, your auntie's lives. This poverty thing won't go away. This incest thing won't go away. This promiscuity and people not getting married. This horror spirit won't go away. This jealous spirit won't go away. Hey, Nicaro. This backbiting and gossiping and just being full of foolishness and garbage and filth won't go away. And when you realize that there is an ACE at play, you have to recognize and guess what? It's not just, well, let me say this is how crafty the enemy is. This thing spreads across all classes, because I've had people that, poor, broke down, struggling people, right? And they just don't want to deal with it. They just would rather medicate their pain with, like I said, food and clothing and that kind of stuff. They don't want to deal with it because some of them are embarrassed. Some of them, are just don't feel capable of overcoming it, because they've seen so many people fall. That's one thing right there. You've seen generation after generation after generation. It's like, why bother? I've witnessed to people in the streets that say, I don't believe in that, because I know people who have believed in it. I've done it before. And that's why I have to have confidence in the Spirit of God that's in me, the anointing that's on me, and say, hey, no, God just wants you to give him try this chance right here. And I'm like, God, you got to make this thing happen, because I'm pleading with this person. I've seen a grown man standing at a gas pump crying, tears in his eyes. He say, I didn't seen people believing it. He was like, I need help right now. And I'm like, God's gonna make it happen for you. I didn't meet you by happenstance, brother. I had to believe that the words I was speaking were spirit and life, and that God honored that I was telling him what God said and not what I said, because I'm like, man, this could ruin this guy, because he's saying he's already given too many chances. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, I know that the chances that he was giving, either he had not given them wholeheartedly, or he was dealing with people that were not spirit-led, right? And so you have to realize, and you have to recognize, when playing ACEs, recognize that there's an ACE at play. There's something wrong. Stop hiding behind it. And what I was saying is, this thing of hiding and not acknowledging, which the devil loves, it's very widespread. You have poor, struggling people who feel like why admit it, because it's just going to make me feel bad. I'm just going to ignore it and act like it's not there, deny that it's there, because then I don't feel bad about not being able to control that area of my life, or not being able to escape something that generations in my family couldn't escape. So I'm just going to act like it's there. I'm going to tell you that's not true, and this, and this, and that's not what it is. I just like clothes, or I just like this, or whatever. That's the lower end of the spectrum. But then I'm not gonna say on another end of people who think they're higher class or in higher economic tax brackets and that kind of thing, and have higher levels of education, higher careers and that kind of thing, they don't want to admit it because they believe ACEs and trauma is just for poor, struggling people. But guess what? ACEs and trauma know no sex, they know no class, they know no race or ethnic group. ACEs are what I said, spirits, and God gave us dominion and authority and a command. He gave us his image and his likeness and a command to rule over every creeping thing on the earth, including spirits, including our own selves. Okay? And so you have to recognize that thing is there. The longer you deny it, the longer the enemy says, hey, she doesn't even know, she doesn't even want to address it. And so she's not going to put any spray on it or set any traps for it or whatever, because she's acting like it's not even there. So we get to have a party and bring more people and that kind of stuff. It's stupid, guys. You're thinking that it's your ego, it's your pride, and you're thinking that you're getting over on somebody. Deep within inside, you know you're not. That's why you're medicating your pain with all this kind of stuff. But you think you're getting over on people by denying that there's an ace at play, that even though people can see it all on you, whether you wear aces on your faces, where people can see, you know, you're stressed out and that kind of stuff, or if you cover it up well, you dress well, you're a high achiever at school and at work, you have a little money and that kind of stuff. But to the trained eye, people can see that there's an ace at play. But the longer you deny that it's there, and I'm saying this for high class, high achieving people and low class struggling people, the longer that you deny that it's there for whatever reason, because you're ashamed of it, or most of the time it's shame that I can't deal with it, or shame that it happened to me, that's going to make me look poor, make me look. And of course you probably came from poverty, but since you've earned a little bit of status, as you think, and got some degrees and some money, you don't want people to know you came from there. But guess what? ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, trauma it could be as common as something that's growing up as a child of divorce, or a single parent, or a separated parent, or it can mean excessive pressure to succeed. I was talking to somebody about that today. Trauma and ACEs are not just about mental abuse and neglect and poverty and drug use in the household. It goes from rich to poor. It goes from young to old. Okay, and so you got to recognize. Stop hiding behind it. Stop denying it. Recognize that there's an ace at play, first of all. Okay. And then you got to release it. Like I said, you don't want to give any place to the devil and give. I believe in the power of thoughts and words. That's who we are created to be in Imago Dei. What we think about and speak about, we bring about. So I'm not telling you to continue talking about it all the time. Now, that's one thing. Like I said, in this book, I talk about a full house. When you have, you have a whole shebang of aces, when you get too many aces together, right? Now, of course, a full house can be a good thing, but also, like I said, you get a bunch of aces in your hand playing gin, rummy, or spade, and you hold them too long, they can be destructive, right? So when you get around people and they're full of aces, you're full of aces, that's all y'all talk about. All you're doing is multiplying negative energy. You gotta admit that it's there and then get around somebody who can help you. Let me say that it's that. Let me say it again, okay? So when we're talking about playing aces, this thing is serious now. It's a lot of people still dealing with it. It's a lot of people who hear me a lot. They're still going through things. Some people are like reaching out. What is this trauma you're talking about? What is this? Well, what about this? So it's a lot of people stuck. Not just according to the CDC the statistics. You can look around. You can look within. You can look close to you and from afar and see that this thing is real. So I'm telling you this formula for playing aces. You got to recognize it, okay? And then you're gonna have to release it. And then you're going to have to be restored, and then you're going to have to reproduce, okay? Reproduce. Albert Einstein said that you don't know something well enough. You don't really know it. You don't really know it at all until you can explain it to somebody else where they understand it, all right? And so until you can reproduce, you really haven't gotten it. Until you can get somebody else to say, hey, listen, this person, your testimony helped me, or the fact that you overcame this and you're showing me how to do it in life, and that anointing causes them to be made free. Okay. And so just the whole thing, it's the title of this session tonight. And like I said, playing aces is about recognizing that there's an ace at play. There's something that happened in childhood that's It probably ruined or really negatively affected your childhood, and it's still doing that in adulthood. Relationship after relationship after relationship, pound after pound after pound after pound, whether it's weight on and then weight back off, like Oprah. And she admitted this is trauma. Weight on, or weight on and then off again. Weight off, right? Whether it's drugs, you smoking weed all the time, you're into harder drugs, you're an alcoholic, this kind of thing. Whether you are, like I said, you a sex fiend, okay? Whether you're married or not, you're whorish. And you let people abuse your body and your soul. Like I said, you can be married or you can be single. You overspend, and you have to have a yoke of debt around you all the time for you to be okay. You're not satisfied unless you got a bunch of debt and you're struggling to pay it. It could be related just to that debt, or it could be related because you have to dress up your outside with things that can instantly gratify you: food, clothing, trips, hairstyles, all that kind of stuff. Whether it's you overachieving, doing too much where you're burning yourself out, whether you're people pleasing. Oprah said that was a part of her food addiction problem, and the weight on and off type thing. Whatever it is, I can keep going and going and going, talking about the ways that people medicate the pain, or ACEs at play, as I like to call them. But you have to realize that something is not quite right, that I know, and you already know it. Your internal engine, the thermostat that God put on the inside of you, that you know you're in Imago Dei. But Marianne Williamson's point, our deepest fear, and I recite it a lot of times, but you know that there's greater for you, and that's why you're at unrest. That's why you're at dis-ease, okay? Not dis-ease, and that's why you have disease in your body and your soul, right? It's showing up. You have to first recognize that that's an ACE at play. That's a trauma that happened a lot of times in childhood or earlier in adulthood, and it's still ruining your adulthood now. Okay, recognize it. Then once you recognize it, don't keep harping on it. You have to release it. You have to give it to God. You have to release it, as in forgiving the people who perpetrated you, who perpetrated against you. Forgiving yourself for the times that some people, even children, sometimes blame themselves for being molested or for somebody dying, which is an ACE, loss of a loved one, or even they may not have blamed themselves for what happened, but they blame themselves for being stuck in it this long. You have to release it. You have to cast your care, not cares. That 1 Peter 5 and 7 doesn't say cast your cares with an S. It says care. Meaning you put your affection and your love and your focus and your eyes on God, and let him care about it. It says, because he cares, he does the caring for you. Everything that the world says you should be caring about, like this happened to me and I got to build this relationship with people. Cast your care on the Lord and he'll take care of your cares with an S, okay? And so you got to release that thing. You got to release it into you got to release it by spirit, meaning I'm a spiritual being, okay? I'm going to be concerned about spiritual things, even to the point releasing means, like I said, when God in Genesis 1 and 26, 1 verses 26 through 27, 28, when he told us in 28 to have dominion over all things that creep on the earth, that includes spirits. You got to subdue these spirits that came through ACES and say, hey, no, I release myself from this, and I evict you out of my life. I'm released from this. I'm not bound up and tied up with you anymore, entangled in this foolishness anymore. So recognize, release, be restored. The Bible says, Psalm 23 and 3, one of the most beautiful passages in the Bible, the 23rd Psalm. Psalm 23 and 3 says, he restoreth my soul. Okay? God restored. He continually makes new again, makes whole again when you've been wounded, when you've been, and I told you about how it goes with the sheep. A sheep, something jumped out of the bushes and maybe bit the sheep or tried to lash at the sheep, or they were walking in the surface was a little rocky and the sheep slid down and almost fell off the side or whatever. Now, for that point on, they're timid. They're really thinking that stuff is around. They cannot rest until the shepherd restores their soul and says, hey, listen, I got my rod and my staff here. I'm around you. I'm leading you. You will not fall. You will not get attacked by another animal. This because you have to have your soul restored. Sometimes your soul comes first. The Bible says John 3 and 20, 1 John 3 and 20, Is it 3? 1 John 3 and 2. Okay, beloved, I wish above all. This is John speaking, but this is Holy Spirit speaking God's heart. Beloved, I wish above all that you prosper as your soul prospers, right? And so your soul has to come first. So a lot of times you got to release your soul from this foolishness. Excuse me, not release. Release, but I was on restore. You have to have your soul restored, and then you got to have your goods restored. The stuff you lost, tangible stuff, the relationships that, not all relationships need to be restored, but some do need to be restored. So you have to be restored, okay? And then you have to reproduce. You have to help somebody else with this thing. You have to, because first of all, that's going to keep you strong. That's going to keep you making sure that you stay released from this. You don't go back to it, because some people find a crutch and a haven in the sob story of the ACES that were played in their lives. Some people, like I said, it's a common. It's so common. That's the talk at the water cooler. That's the talk at that's a commonality in family. That's a commonality. That's something that it's a common thread that keeps people, especially people in low places. Matter of fact, when you talk about stress responses, the fight, flight, freeze, and appease, appease is something that has been added recently, like in some years past. But then flock, in that book that I've referenced earlier tonight, What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah, there is a response to stress and trauma called flocking, where you look around to see how others are responding to what's going on. All right. And I know this to be very common among people who are in low socioeconomic status, like impoverished, struggling mentally, physically. They want to be with people, right? It's communal. And a lot of times they're just failing together. It's just they're multiplying the negative energy, okay? So some relationships don't need to be restored, because you don't want to get around people where you're multiplying negative energy, where you're creating babies, you're creating negative babies. I'm not talking about I do mean you don't want to be having physical babies, but spirits are having baby spirits, and they're inviting more spirits, because the Bible talks about, once we get the power of coming together, that's who we are as spiritual beings. And so 1 can send 1,000, 2 can send 10,000, that kind of stuff. A man and a woman together make 3. All right, they create a baby. It's that synergy that we have. So you don't want to be around. Some relationships are not going to be restored, but the restoration part is your soul being restored, then your physical stuff being restored, or tangible stuff like relationships, money, opportunities that you sabotaged when the ace was at play and you had not played it was playing you. And so restoration. And then like I said, I'm sorry, I had moved on to reproduce. You got to reproduce. God says you got to produce everything, produce after its own kind. And so when they say hurt people, when you were hurt and wounded and the ace was at play and you had not dealt with it was dealing with you, guess what? You were reproducing. You were attracting other hurt people to hurt you more. Bad relationships, people who use you, people who want to exploit you, whether it's on a job, whether it's a friendship, a family, whatever. You're attracting that. You're multiplying and creating more negative energy and more gaps in your life for the enemy to come in and say, come on, bring some more people. All right. And so now it's the flip side of that has to be true. When you're restored, okay, the Bible, and I said I'm not going to get into this verse today because I haven't done enough studying on it, even though some of it is, you can take it for face value, but a lot of things in the Bible you don't need to, because you have to look at it in context. You have to look at it spiritually. And so I was going to reference I'm going to stick right to Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, okay? So God says you got to be fruitful and multiply. You got to start making some things happen. Where you were barren, okay, listen. Let me take a hydration break real quick. I want you to put an ace, whatever kind of ace. It can be ace of spades, ace of diamonds, or whatever. Look in the emojis and put an ace in the comments if you've ever seen the movie Scarface, okay? If you have ever seen the movie Scarface, Al Pacino, Tony Montana is the character, but it's played by Al Pacino. Put some kind of ace in the comments if you've seen Scarface. Scarface, he wanted Michelle Pfeiffer, which she was married to another man when Tony wanted her. Tony Montana wanted her, and he was poor, he was struggling, he was an immigrant, a Cuban refugee. He came over, started selling cocaine, like really, really big time, became very wealthy, ended up getting ready to kill this girl's husband, Michelle Pfeiffer's husband, which is the girl he wanted. He overtook him, okay, and then he got ready to kill Frank, which was Michelle Pfeiffer's husband, right? So Tony wanted Michelle Pfeiffer, and he ended up getting her. But because one, like I said, she was a wounded soul, very wounded soul, very wounded soul, all right? And like I said, most of the time, you look at this way. If somebody told you this, pay attention to it. If they will do it with you, they'll do it to you. So if you stole somebody from somebody else, guess what? That person probably ain't really into you either. Just like on the Wolf of Wall Street, same thing happened. So because he became the man, you know, moving more cocaine than Frank, her husband, and he killed Frank, she ended up going with him, but she really didn't want to be with him, okay? But of course, it was fun because he had all the money now. He was trying to win her, so it was more, you know, he was doing anything and everything. So long story short, she was wounded, and she didn't want to be with him on top of that, right? So she stayed coked up. She stayed on pills. She was taking these Quaaludes. Quaaludes were still legal then. She was taking these Quaaludes and snorting, you know, a whole lot of cocaine and drinking a lot and just doing nothing. And she could do it because he was bankrolling her, right? Just laying around the pool and just staying high, staying asleep all day and that kind of thing. So when he wanted to have babies, she could not produce. And he went off on it. He was coked up and he was drunk and he got mad. Of course, all his success is not what it was chopped up to be. And so he got all the money. He got the girl, but realized she ain't worth it. He's looking over his head. So he made it to be the man. He went from a Cuban refugee to a cocaine boss, which is a big deal. But of course, he wanted the money. He came from being dirt poor as a Cuban refugee. And so he finally made it. And found out it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, right? And so he wants something greater. He wants to see himself reproduce. He wants a baby, and not to see himself reproduce. He wants a little life, right? Most people, especially men, but most people want, you know, a baby, want children. And so he wants a baby, but Michelle Pfeiffer cannot give it to him because, and he says it's because she's always full of drugs, because her body is so poisoned. He said, your womb is poisoned. You can't even give me a kid, right? And he embarrassed her because he was talking to, I think they were like in a restaurant or something. He's like, her womb's so polluted, she can't even have a little baby, man. She can't even have a little, and so he started antagonizing her with that and taunting her, you know, at the house and for days, like, you can't even give me a baby because you're so coked up, your body, your womb is so poisoned. Guess what? When you are wounded, okay, you produce wounded babies, okay? And just jot down Isaiah 10:27 because it's 10:27 on my clock right now. Isaiah 10:27 talks about yokes being destroyed and burdens removed off of our shoulder through Jesus Christ. That's the kind of stuff. You have to release that stuff, let it be removed. And once you restore, you got to reproduce, okay? And so Michelle Pfeiffer in that movie, Scarface, Tony really ended up destroying her worse because he started taunting her, saying, you can't even give me a baby. What use are you? Because, and he said, you can't do it because your womb is polluted. You stay on all these pills, this cocaine, this drinking, and that kind of stuff. Same thing here. When you are wounded, when there's an ACES play in your life, you reproduce more, whether it's in your kids, whether it's friends, whether it's people you talk to just in passing. You could just be at the grocery store and your negative energy, because it's so negative and you are finding a way to lose, guess what? You're reproducing after your own kind. That's the law of the harvest. Everything reproduces after its own kind, okay? Negative thoughts are going to create more negative thoughts and negative energy and create negative opportunities for negative things to manifest. Positive energy, positive thoughts, the word of God, the will of God, thinking in spirit, in his spirit, okay, are going to produce more positive thoughts, positive energy, positive gateways for God to come in, positive ways for angels to go in and make things happen for you, for the Spirit of God to minister to you. Positive manifestations. And so when you're wounded and first of all you have not recognized, you still want to avoid it and act like it's not there. You have not recognized that there's an ACES play, or you did but you won't release it, which is the next R, okay? Or you recognize that you released it but you won't be restored. You still look, you really it has become such a part of your life that you're still lamenting the fact that it's gone, even though you won't say it, rather than being restored and having those gaps filled and those wounds healed. Hallelujah. That was a mouthful right there. So you can recognize it and admit that it's there. And then you can even move into releasing it, but then you won't be restored. And if you're not restored, first of all, you cannot give what you haven't been given. Okay, so restored means you're back. All the holes and stuff and patches are plugged up, and you've been made new. Not just plugged up, you've been made new. The Bible says, Revelation 21:5, behold, I make all things new. Okay, that's Jesus speaking. I wipe away all tears. I make all things new. Right. Very related to Isaiah 10:27. Destroying yokes, removing burdens that the enemy has had on us for generations. That's what Jesus does for you. That's what going back to your imago Dei state of being is. So you release it, but you might not be restored. You don't want to be restored, but you get restored. And then guess what? Now that you're restored, it's time to start reproducing. You got to produce after your own kind. Okay, that's really the true test of manifestations. I agree with Albert Einstein, and it's in the Bible as well. Everything produces after its own kind. So if you're doing something and you're not producing, that may mean that you haven't even arrived yet. The anointing's not there. Jesus. And that was just a quick unannounced hydration break. And I think I'm gonna stop there tonight, okay? But just remember, these are the 4 things you gotta do to play the ACEs, to get them out of your hand, to make them work for you. Use social trauma for empowerment rather than imprisonment. I need everybody to get a copy of this book, okay? I need you to, I'll put the link in the comments. I need you to get a copy of this book and read it, because my goal is to help thousands of people this year become trauma informed and trauma responsive. Had a major breakthrough today. I met with some people, meeting with some more people later this week and next week to set up, to get some things going. But one way, if you never make it to one of my trainings, which I hope that's not the case, because you may not be able to come to a 5-hour training. You may say it's too heavy for me, or I really can't. I promise you, it's one of the most engaging trainings, classes, courses, and empowering. You're going to leave with some tools, internal and external, to help you and your family and the people around you, those people you lead and feed. But if you never make it to a training, even if you never make it to an edutainment event, like I got one coming up on Saturday the 24th. Okay, the 24th of this month. It's a private event. Tomorrow I'm going to open registration for it. It's an exclusive event. What I mean private, as in this one is open to the community, but it's exclusive because it may be at a very exclusive location that's very limited. I don't think I'm doing this in a big venue yet, but it will be open to the community, so it's going to be first come, first serve. But even if you never make it to a short 3-hour edutainment event where there's food, it's called Trauma Talks Around the Table and Television. So we're going to be having dinner and watching the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and discussing trauma by picking pieces out of that movie. Yes, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. God has blessed me to be able to use that to discuss trauma so that it's not too heavy, but what needs to get discussed will be discussed. And we'll be having some delicious food. We're going to have a great, engaging discussion. We're going to meet some people. It's going to be powerful, right? But even if you never come to, that's probably one of my shortest events, all right? You never come to a trainer or anything like that, you can get this book, and I'm going to show you how God helped me, anointed me to play ACEs and help other people do it, okay? Play ACEs. Matter of fact, I was just talking about this today. This, just for instance, page 47, middle paragraph. When you play the crappy hand you're dealt and you still succeed, the success is oh so much sweeter. It's crazy, but some people are actually looking for you to fail so they can feel better about themselves by making you a charity case, but really looking down on you. It's okay to be a statistic, but be a positive one. I can hear Derek Luke, as he played Antoine Fisher in the blockbuster movie, pridefully confess to his molester and abuser. I'm still here. I'm still strong. No matter what you tried to do to hurt me or break me down, right? Don't let anybody make you feel less than inferior because you had some aces in your hand of life. If anything, they should look up to you. I used to think that way about my students and really feel proud of them because they survived, and some of them even thrived after being faced with so much adversity. Some to the point that most people wouldn't even believe it if they really heard their stories. When you have stood the test of times, played the hand you were dealt, and still came out on top, You've proven that you are cut from a different cloth and are born and built to be on top. Don't let anyone discount the fact that you've been proven by fire, which is what happens to gold and other precious metals. All right, and I'm gonna stop right there. But that's just the mindset that a lot of people who are broken down by ACEs never had. And God anointed me to share that with people. So just reading this book, it's an easy read. It's an easy read. It's a poem on page 43. Children learn what they live. Okay, children learn what they live. Okay, by Dorothy Law Nolte, Dr. Dorothy Law Nolte. I was just talking to somebody about this poem today. I had a lunch meeting with somebody, and they said they learned this as a child, and I'm like, in kindergarten. And so in the work that this person does, God had a calling on them way back then. A kindergartner recited this poem. That's powerful. That's one of the things in there. But this book, the last part of this book is something called Good Days, where I tell the story of my life in like little short paragraphs, some good, some bad, some good, some bad. And then at the end, it's just all good. I talked about my travel experience, some of the most amazing rooms I've been in, some of the things I've achieved. But before then, it was ups and downs, some of the ugliest times in my life. But it ends out on a good note, and it's called Good Days because I come to conclude, and I'm so glad and I'm so grateful to God that all of my good days outweigh my bad days. And some of them were really bad, but some of them were super good. Okay, and so I need you to get a copy of this book. If you don't have a copy of this book, I need you to get a hard copy of this book. I'm going to put the link in the matter of fact, I can do it now on my other computer. If you're watching the playback, get a copy of this book. Okay, get a copy of this book because that's what I'm teaching for a while now, playing ACEs. This thing is real, and people have got to take it seriously. Stop fighting it. Stop running from it. Stop trying to act like it's not there, because what the enemy is doing, he's celebrating. He's excited, because as long as you ignore it and act like it's not there, the bigger he becomes, the more of his forces he can bring in. And you have to play these ACEs before they play another generation in your family, including you and your offspring. All right. That's what I want to tell you tonight. Get a copy of this book. Okay. Those who watch the playback, some people, I see people around town. I've been seeing people more than ever, like, I have to catch you on like the next morning or whatever, but I watch it. Those people who are watching the playback, click the link. It's a very, very minimal investment. Get a copy of this book. Okay. When I tell you to do things, I'm speaking spirit and life. Whether I told you about releasing something, I didn't really give you a lot of instructions tonight. I just kind of gave you an overview of how you really play ACEs. You recognize them, release them, become restored, and then you reproduce after your healed self. Healed people heal people. Okay. So get a copy of this book. Get it. You can get it from Amazon, but I would prefer you get it from me so that I can ship it. I can sign my name in it. It's been prayed over. I'll pray for you, and I want to get you a copy out to you. So click the link in the comments. I'm going to wait till I get off, because it's something I have on my Facebook page. I want to keep it up because I want to show somebody on my laptop. So I've got to wait and do it and post the link on my phone. So I'm gonna get off of here and put the link up for you to get a hard copy of this book right here. And you know what? I'm actually out of copies right now, but I have some coming like later this week. Long story short, either way, just go ahead and get it. And I want you tomorrow, okay? Invite people, and tomorrow, okay, go ahead and register. When registration opens up for this community-wide Trauma Talks Around the Table and Television, a limited and exclusive event, go ahead and pay. It's just like $25 for it's going to be delicious food included. We're going to be in an exclusive location. It's going to be amazing, okay? It's edutainment. It's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. It's going to help you a lot, but it's going to be the tagline. It's a light atmosphere for us to discuss something very heavy that needs to be discussed in our community. So invite people, tell people about this, get people out. And when registration closes, it closes, and you'll have to wait for the next one, because I'm going to be doing more of these. That Friday, the 23rd, I have one that's private that I'm doing for an organization. And then Saturday, I'm doing my own that's open to the community. A lot of people have been waiting for this, because I put up flyers about private ones just to let people know what we're doing. And people tried to come to those events, but they were hosted at private locations for private groups. They were exclusive for those groups, and I set it up that way. But now this is the first one that's community-wide. It's going to be Saturday, September 24th at 6 p.m. in Albany, Georgia, where I live, and it's going to be delicious food. The ticket is only $25. Tomorrow, I'm going to release the link for that, and the flyer will be up. And I want you to, right now, though, in the meantime, get this book right here. Get a copy of this book. Click the link, get a copy of this book. Get it for some people that you know who need it, okay? It's an easy read, but it's going to definitely, I promise you, it's going to help you be more trauma informed and trauma responsive. They're going to show you how common trauma is, okay, in people close up to you and from afar off, and how you need to deal with it, how to help yourself, how to help others around you, okay? I love you all. Good night. I'm just going to stop there, okay?